Winter has dropped radically. Just yesterday we had 10 Celsius. Today I woke up at -7. So we've dropped from about 50 Fahrenheit to about 18 Fahrenheit overnight. That means no more wiring, no more pruning. But what can you do under these circumstances? And of course, I am not referring to sharpening and oiling your tools, even though that is something that you could do right now. I'm not talking about cleaning up. I'm talking about Deadwood. Let's work on Deadwood. This Juniper needs a lot of Deadwood work. I bought it, I think, 2 years ago at the Nolanders trophy from Jack Ross Bonsai. And then it had just been grafted here and here, and there was a lot of natural Juniper foliage on there. This is not such pretty foliage, but the previous owner already grafted Chinese Juniper foliage, which is nice and compact. Here there's a branch and there's a branch. This is a very compact form, I'm not sure. I think it is just a regular Chinese Juniper. So I've let it grow for the last 2 years so that these grafts have taken over, and over summer I took off the original foliage. Now it is ready to work on. And why do I really like winter to do the Deadwood work? Well, very simply said, the soil is rock solid. So if I hammer on these branches or on the trunk, I don't give the roots a big hit. Because the roots are completely encapsulated in ice, it's all stable and nothing will move. So it is a lot lighter, I think, on the roots to do it now. And why not now, right? Because after all, it is winter, there's not a lot more that we can do. So what's the first step that I want to do? The first step that I am going to take here is remove all the dead bark. It has been a few years since these big stumps were cut, so all the living bark has died off. And all the tissue that is now alive is still feeding this foliage. Everything else is just Deadwood. So let's find these live veins. I personally find it easiest to just go into cracks. So in the cracks in the bark. And I am using here a little steel tool. It is blunt. It is flattened on the edges but not really sharp. And I just squeeze it underneath and I gently wiggle it around. And then the bark will just come up on the spaces where you have these cracks. Now what you see here is that the bark is almost purple, and purple bark typically is bark that is still alive. So I'm going to leave that alone for now. Similarly, I'm just going to explore all these little cracks, and I'm going to see how far these cracks move before I get to living tissue. I know that this here can only be alive from this branch. So gently I just start peeling away here all these layers of old bark, just to see which ones still have living tissue underneath it. You can clearly see this is all dead because you draw straight away at the wood. I'm hoping that there's a lot of living tissue still here. That's why I'm going quite slowly and gently. It doesn't help that it is so cold. Now my hands in gloves, I don't have the same level of control, right? This bark here has completely died. And if I now insert my steel tool underneath it, you can see that I can just pull it off all the way to the dead wood underneath it. I have to be a little bit careful not to push the foliage around too much. Look, this is all wood. Although I admit it looks very purple right now as well. So I can go all the way from this edge and just start peeling it back. This is because it has been dead for a long time. Now if you're not sure where to start, you can always decide, look, this part is all dead. The living tissue is here, connected to this branch. So this here has no function. All the sap flow coming from this side branch will go through the branch and then towards the roots. So this part is certainly dead. So I can always start from here, lifting fibers. And everything that I pull down is all connected to the same sap flow, and therefore it is all dead here. And as you get closer to the part that's still alive, you have to be a little bit more careful. So I like to gently scratch and see whether I get living tissue or dead tissue. And so far this is all still dead. See, here I am straight away at the wood. So all of this is dead bark. And this way, if you start teasing closer and closer to the point where it is living, at a certain point you will find the edge of the living tissue and the dead tissue. And the living tissue will be very different in color. It will straight away be very bright purple with some green and some very bright white. Not this white, this is actually the wood itself. So working from top to bottom, from the foliage towards the roots, is always a good idea when you're not sure where the live sections are. The cracking of the bark, of course, is places where it has swollen and therefore cracked. It's important to find the living tissue so that you don't accidentally break a living connection. And a similar story here, right? So this is the grafted branch. So from here the sap flow will go into the trunk. That means that this part is definitely not serving any purpose. Now I know I have over summer been cutting off side branches, so some of this bark might still have living tissue, but in principle this should all be dead all the way till the end, and it is. You see how this is just a dull kind of white, also almost beige, and here you see the first real white that's coming through. But I know this has no purpose because there is no sap flow this direction, so I can always go all the way to the base and say I'm going to remove this. But this is living tissue, still dying back from earlier this year. So I have to be a little bit careful here now. At the bottom there's much less likely to be a sap flow. Here this is living tissue. So now we're getting into the area, this is all alive and below it is still dead. Here, this is probably the future top of my tree. And this is a lower branch of the tree. And this is all dead. So the branch splits here into the living branch with deadwood and in a dead part. Now this is actually way too massive if I want this to be a gentle top of a tree. So I'm going to use my Matsu branch breaker to break this branch in two, if I can. No, I can't. Let's use a regular branch splitter then. That works. So this is just a regular branch splitter, and this one is bent, so you can actually use it to then go in and bend it down and break it further apart. This is all quite aggressive work. Coarse work is just the first step. After the coarse work is done, you can start pulling away the smaller fiber strands one by one, eliminating as much as possible the marks of individual tools that are used. Now here, this little stump, I also want to pretty much go completely so that the line of this trunk is more visible and this is more separated. So then I'll split this. And can then pull it off. And naturally you can, with your pliers, then still remove small fibers. And as you pull them, sometimes you'll find that you get traction and you can pull a much bigger piece off. Look, these. So these sort of pieces that you can take out really add to the 3D feeling of the deadwood. It adds a little bit of depth. Now I want to be careful that I don't pull through too far, but try to pull fibers out at the same location, one after another, and that way create a bit of depth. too big to get out, too tight. But now I've got a connection again, so I can pull more out from the same spot. As said, I really want to create a bit of depth in there. Following the national line of the fibers, you could of course use a carving tool here, but by using a carving tool you're going to go against the grain of the wood. And once the wood starts to age and mature and starts to crack, it's going to be very obvious that it was man-made. So I prefer to try and create these just by pulling out fibers. It is a bit of work though. Once you're happy with the final layout, you can sandblast the tree. But who has a sandblasting equipment at home? I don't. So I use, this is a steel wire brush, to clean out the first rough fibers, and then I actually burn the wood slightly to just burn off the loose little ends. And of course it's wise to protect your foliage a little bit. Now of course, if this is going to be the top of the tree, this is all way too long. So I want it shorter and I want it thinner, but I have to be careful that I don't go all the way here to the ground, because this is still something that can easily be damaged. So let me just make a tiny little cut here to make the first break. Also I don't want to break it all the way till the end here. Now let's see where I can break this. So this is already a lot thinner and more natural, and now I can just do gentle styling here on this Deadwood as well. So this is just going to be quite crude initially, and as I'm styling the tree I will over time just clean this up more. I'm really not used to working with gloves, and I think that's quite apparent. And of course, as you work on this, you can continuously improve these. Like here now, this seems to still be very connected. And I'm going to try to take this middle piece out here. Again, gently just pulling fibers out. This way you add the 3D character. And in this case, I hope to open up this space a little bit more. I think now it looks much better. Now has really space between this piece and that piece. It really looks more like decaying old Deadwood. These sort of pieces are of course daunting, and here I would normally consider also using a carving tool to get the first shaping in. All the way up to here is dead. This is of course way too big for the tree that I have, so a big part of this lump needs to come off, and actually there's just this tiny little thing here, which I think you cannot see. This little nubbin, and I think I want to remove everything up to this nubbin and then thin it off so it fuses into this trunk. That means a lot of removal of Deadwood. Mind you, I'm doing this with all very blunt tools because I want to break and pull fibers. I don't want to cut fibers. Now, as expected, this is very slow work, but one of the reasons why I do it this way is, first of all, I can then decide that in the styling I'm going to actually keep this, but more importantly, you see these little dots in here, and if you work around them, these dots are all old branches, so they have little stumps like this, and they're still in the structure of the wood. There's one here, there's one there, there's one there, there's one there, and I'm trying to, when I take out fibers of wood, to go around and not pull off the little stump itself. So this adds another layer of character to the wood, and this is actually getting too coarse a tool to use, but you can see how you can completely liberate these from the surrounding wood. That's because as the branch expanded and grew, it grew all the way around this branch, encapsulating it but not completely fixing it in place. So later with a very fine tool I can now make nice patterns around it. A lot of work, but hey, bonsai takes time. And as it matures, it takes decades to mature into a nice bonsai. You better have this deadwood nicely shaped as well, right? Come on. So this is roughly styled. There's a lot of structure on this part, but there's no structure on this part. I don't intend to take a lot of wood off, but with a little chisel and a few taps, you can create structure in here as well. Gently breaking them out, and then with pliers pull them up around features such as an old side branch, and this way create a bit of depth, a bit of structure. And by repeating this process in multiple places and creating multiple levels of depth, you create interest in the whole Deadwood section. And once you have a little entrance, it's quite easy to continue opening it up, right? Now this runs the risk of breaking away the little stump here, so I need to halve it. Go one down and the other half up along the feature, and this way create a little bit more interest in the surface. And if you take a little bit more time, you can create ever smaller pieces that you bring up, ever increasing the detail. And this is what I said, you can do this over winter, but also in summer you can continue detailing these sort of areas. Because now here you see the little grain of the wood around the stump that still sits there. Let me see where I can grab this. Right, I'm freezing my nose off, my toes are gone, my fingers don't move anymore, and it is getting dark. So time to stop this work. I hope this gave you some sort of an idea on how you can deal with these cut-off stumps. This of course is not completely done yet. I still want to add more profile here to this lower trunk. And there's a lot of work still to be done here. But that will be in the full video where I show how I got it 2 years ago. Reducing the foliage, reducing the deadwood, styling the whole tree. But that's going to be another year or two before that comes out. So with that, I'm going to wish you a nice ending of 2025. And I will do one more video this year, New Year's Eve, a Q&A video. And with that, thank you for watching. Keep growing bonsai. This was Jelle.